Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of council to order. Today is Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. And I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inkla-Katmuks and Syilx people. There are no late items. Public input. Do we have any public input, Greg?
None was provided to City Hall prior to the meeting, Your Worship, and there's no one in the public gallery.
Thank you. Adoption of the minutes, 4.1, recommended that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 19th, 2022 be adopted. I need a mover. And seconder, that would be, I think it was Luck and Etchart. And any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None carried. We have no public hearing. There is no delegation. And we move on to bylaws. We have 8.1. And Mr. Anderson, this is the previous 2021-2025 financial plan, and it's an amendment to that 5-year plan, right?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the amended 2021 to 2025 financial plan. So during the year, there are a number of meetings that happen and resolutions that are passed in order to revise the financial plan. And I suggest that this year, probably 2022 to 2026, there will be a number of these revisions throughout the year. And we consolidate them all to the end of the year and put forward the amended financial plan. So what you're seeing here with this bylaw 2335-2022 is the amendment. So during the year, there was a number of things that we did bring forward. On August 21st, we talked about $100,000 for the active mountain reservoir and $67,000 for the Vote Street well pump. Vote Street well pump is probably being put in at some point in the future here. I don't think it was damaged through the flooding. It was kind of on the shelf at the time of the flood. And then the $100,000 for the active mountain reservoir, bringing that online. I believe we carried that forward through to 2022 to do that project. We had in September another meeting where we brought forward $42,000 for elevator repairs at Nicola Valley Memorial Arena. And as I understand, that is ongoing and will be completed this year. In October, at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, we had some budgets, and they're identified in Table 1 there, the ones that were brought forward at that meeting, a number of operating expenditures that we wanted to revise, totaling about $106,000 increase in operation expenditures. One thing that was brought forward was also a potential $110,000 cost overrun for the Trans Mountain Sanitary Dump Station. We ended up coming in significantly under on our water dispensing station, and the contract that we had with Trans Mountain was a combined water and sanitary contract, which overall was about $10,000 more than contract, and they agreed to fund 100% of our costs on that. So that is not a requirement at this time. So that's a bit of a good news story there. One thing subsequent to all of the meetings in October, since October 28th, which was our last meeting to discuss amendments, there was $13,000 in costs to install the 2 new transit stops on Vote Street. And those were sitting as operating expenses, but really they are capital in nature and come out of our capital fund. And specifically the Active Transportation Reserve would pay for those. We don't own the transit stops. They are owned by BC Transit, but we maintain them. But we had to pay for the installation costs on that. So that's the only one that wasn't discussed in a formal meeting at the time. So overall, the amended plan brings the operating or transfers to surplus down to $172,000 from our original, I think it was $279,000. So that was the impact throughout the year of all of those adjustments on the net transfer to reserves in the plan. We'll see our financial statements tomorrow, which will have the actual surplus for the year.
Are there any questions for Mr. Anderson? I have one. Were these brought about through the accountants that we just didn't do the amendment last year? We got a little busy towards the end of the year?
Through the mayor, we did the amendments last year as well. We had before our financial plan was brought forward, we did an amended financial plan as well. So it's been consistently done that way. My predecessor as well lumped them together and do an amendment at the end. Some municipalities may do an amendment every time they bring forward something, but our process is to combine them.
I think one of the things though I did was lose track of the numbers for the amendments. So maybe that could be brought to our attention at some point when we start the next budget, that there's still these outstanding amendment items. Just a heads up, not in detail like this, but.
Right. Maybe at the Finance and Audit Committee meetings would be a good time to just keep that running list going of all of the amendments.
Yeah, that would be a good place.
Yeah.
So seeing no questions, I'm going to ask for a recommendation. A mover and a seconder that the City of Merritt 2021-2025 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2335-2022 be read a first time. Christofferson and Etchart. And anyone want to speak to this? Okay. See nobody taking. Oh, are you going to, Councillor Etchart?
I think some of these amendments have escaped us, but so much has happened in the last 6 months. It seems like it was so long ago. But like the elevator, as an example. To make sure that we had it for the hockey season was something that we had discussed, I think in October or September, worrying that it could not be functional. And then of course we had the flood, but I do remember that we discussed it. It's just that we've had so many discussions of many things since that it's kind of hard to keep it top of mind, but thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, none, carried. And that the City of Merritt 2021-2025 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw number 2335-2022 be read a second time. Luck in a chart. And anybody want to speak to this? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed, none. And that the City of Merritt 2021-2025 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw number 2335-2022 be read a third time. Fair and Christofferson. And any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, none, carried. Now we move on to the 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw and 2022 Property Tax Bylaw. Again, Mr. Anderson, staff report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, the 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw and the 2022 Property Tax Rate Bylaw. These bylaws, nothing has changed since the last meeting as far as the plan. It is as presented at our previous meeting, so there's no changes to discuss at this time on that. It is a requirement of Section 165 of the Community Charter that Council of the City of Merritt must adopt a 5-year financial plan, and we must impose property value taxes for the year by establishing a tax rate for the municipal revenue proposed to be raised for the year from property tax values as provided in the financial plan. That's as per Section 197 of the Community Charter. So this also includes the rates for the TNRD, Hospital District, and so forth as well, included in the tax rate bylaw. Nothing really to explain on this one. I mean, it's pretty self-evident what it is. It includes our tax rate increase proposed in our previous meeting. The allocation on page, I guess it's the 5th page of the bylaw itself, where it shows residential utilities, major industry. Last year, the percentage from residential was 54%. It wasn't to the decimal place last year, but it has come down to 52.7% of the tax revenue from residential, so slightly down. Utilities is up 8 to 8.5. major industry at 7.9. It was at 8. And light industry is fairly much the same as is business. So the increase really was, from 7 to 8.5 on utilities. 32.4% of our total revenue is generated through property tax as per our plan. And if there's any questions, we'll take them now, but that's the one plan, so we want to do 3 readings on that. Do we want to talk about the property tax rate bylaw as well? Do it all at once?
Sure, let's do it all at once.
So the property tax rate bylaw outlines the taxation rates that are levied for general municipal, the Thompson-Nicola Regional District rate, the Thompson Regional Hospital rate, and the transit rate. And as per section 237 of the Community Charter, the tax notice will provide for a tax due date of July 4th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. and state that a 10% penalty will be applied on any outstanding balances as of that date and time. We repeal bylaw number 2309, 2021, which were our tax rates for 2021, by putting forward this bylaw 2333, 2022.
Did you say we repealed or we need to repeal?
As part of this bylaw, the 2309, 2021 is repealed. So
okay.
Approval of this bylaw will repeal that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I was under the understanding that we actually have to repeal it, but okay.
It's active bylaw, and I think this bylaw, you stand corrected by Mr. Lois, but I think this, by stating that we're going to repeal the previous bylaw, it's all covered within the one bylaw.
I just needed to be corrected. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Anderson? I just had a comment for you in parcel taxes, page 30 of 56. You are referencing 2022 to be the proportion of revenues, not 2021.
That is correct. 2022 should be the, 2022 is 4.4%.
So that's just a typo.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Anderson? Okay, I need a mover that the City of Merritt 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw number 2332-2022 be read a first time. Etchart Christofferson. And anyone want to throw their hat in the ring and discuss this at this point? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed, none, carried. And recommended that the City of Merritt 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw number 2332-2022 be read a second time. Luck and Etchart, and I don't see anyone jumping in, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, none, carried. The recommendation that the City of Merritt 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw number 2332-2022 be read a third time. That's Etchart and Fair. I'm sorry, it's Christofferson and Fair. Anyone want to tackle this for a quick opening? Seeing no hands, I would call a question. All in favor? Opposed, none, carried. And the recommendation that the City of Merritt 2022 Annual Property Taxes Bylaw number 2333-2022 be read a first time. Luck Etchart, and anyone want to speak to this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, none. And at the City of Merritt 2022 Annual Property Taxes Bylaw number 2333-2022 be read a second time. Etchart, and Luck. And anyone want to speak to this? Seeing none, call a question. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And that the City of Merritt 2022 Annual Property Taxes Bylaw number 2333, 2022 be read a third time. Etchart and Fair. And last chance to speak on this Annual Property Taxes Bylaw, well, until we go into next week. Yeah, exactly. So I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. We still have to adopt it. Tomorrow. Oh, not next week. Tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, Wayne is looking at me kind of funny. Okay,
Yeah,
Wayne,
next week, yeah,
we
go
can
ahead.
do it.
Yeah,
We
just
can
we'll
do
miss
it.
all the deadlines. Yeah.
We can do it tomorrow. So, good on that, thank you. Amendments to Park Regulations Bylaw, Mr. Lois, for the staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to start, before I say anything else, noting that staff do not believe that this is a perfect solution to anything, and in fact we believe there will be a number of issues and potential consequences to this, but we are aware that there are a number of people who have asked for, identified one specific problem, and this is a proposed solution to that. So essentially we're bringing this forward for you for discussion and to look at what you think the best outcome to this would be. As I think a lot of Merrittonians are aware, there is an increasing number of people who are camping in Naquala Park. There was a period of time when the tents were pretty much gone over the winter. This was partially due to the evacuation and the requirement to leave during the flooding. But with the improved weather now, there are an increasing number of people who are, again, camping there. This is immediately adjacent to the shelter, and so to some of the supports they have. We do believe that the vast majority of the people who are camping there are homeless and do not have anywhere to actually live, although there is suggestion from the RCMP that at least some of those people do potentially have dwellings they can return to, albeit not in Merritt. The parks bylaw as we currently have it prohibits camping of any kind in any city parks in Merritt. And the BC courts have found repeatedly that a bylaw which is that strict and that devoid of context is simply unenforceable against homeless people who have nowhere else to camp. So essentially, because they have no home, we can't criminalize anything. We're a municipality, but we can't prohibit them from sleeping in the parks when they have nowhere else to go. What we potentially can do, and has been done in some other communities, is to allow camping on a strictly overnight basis, again, strictly for people who have no home to actually live in to go to, but then to require those camps to be packed up on a daily basis and then removed from the park. This would potentially be a solution to the identified problem that people have come to City Hall with, saying that there are people who are camping in the park for an extended period of time, because we would then be able to enforce requiring people to leave the park during the day. And then they would, again, at night be able to set up a tent again so that they could stay there explicitly just overnight and again remove things the next morning. We anticipate that if there are people who are simply staying there because it's convenient and they do have a dwelling to return to outside of Merritt, this could potentially encourage some of them to return and to spend less time in the community. But we do know that there are some people who are literally homeless. They have nowhere else to go, and this will simply mean, if we do it, that they will potentially be walking around Merritt during the day. They will need to be carting their possessions with them, and then again they will need to be setting up camp again overnight. So as I say, this is definitely not an ideal solution to any problem. We do also suggest in the report that you could consider other city parks. However, we believe that of all the city parks, although Naquala is not a good option, it is probably the least worst for reasons which are discussed in the report. And so essentially, if you would like to ask any questions, I'm here. I know Mr. Smith has also had a meeting this afternoon where he went to some of these with some other service providers, and up to you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, did you want to comment on your?
I will, Your Worship. Thank you. As Mr. Lawes has suggested here, we did have a great discussion with some of our service organizations, including the shelter and Ask Wellness and others, and BC Housing, Interior Health. In general, there is support for this bylaw from those organizations, which may be contrary to what I think council's expectation would have been at the outset. They also recognize this as a problem, and that opinion wasn't unanimous because, of course, from a service provider's perspective, sometimes it can be helpful having people in a single location to make sure that they're safe, that services can be provided, that they're cleaned up after. But we also recognize there are other interests, public health interests. When camps become entrenched and become permanent, there's fire risk and other risks associated with that as well. And so we have to balance those and include as well the public concern and things looking unsightly and reduced access to parks. The one thing that they did raise that may necessitate a slight amendment to the wording is that in other communities where there was a requirement to pack up and then always remove that stuff and their person from the park, they had to go somewhere else. Does it make sense that they would be required to pack up but not necessarily remove everything, like remove all the stuff into a sea can or to Kilshenna or Spirit Square so that they can bring it back again? Like, where's the stuff gonna go was really the question. And if there isn't a ready solution to that, then it may make sense that it must be packed up, but perhaps the requirement to remove everything from the park may be overbroad, but I'll let council determine that. The other thing that I think I would note, as Greg was really clear in sharing here, that we have a number of persons in our community who do not have adequate housing for whatever the reason, and in some instances it might be that they're being priced out. I think in more instances it's probably mental health or addictions that are contributing to their inability to find safe, secure, low barrier housing. And so I think that despite the fact this is hard, that everybody is going to have an opinion on it. Like, not just a few people, everyone will have an opinion on this issue, that none of those opinions are going to solve the problem outright. I just want to ensure that council knows that when we're recommending this, we do know that this is, as Greg said, not an ideal solution or outcome. We're not perfectly comfortable with it, but if it makes a difference in potentially encouraging people who have alternate residences to go back to those residences, we see this as one potential step that we can take to provide some degree of harmony in that area.
Thank you. So questions for staff. Councillor Fair.
It's been partially answered by Mr. Smith, but I wanted to ask if there's any way to determine objectively if there are people camping there who actually have a place to live. I don't know if there's any way to determine that with any certainty.
With perfect certainty, probably not, particularly because even if they have a fixed address, is that housing suitable? There's going to be some qualitative determinants there as well. But as this is structured, it would be in part bylaw encouraging folks to move on. But at least at the outset, RCMP would support that, and RCMP have the ability to do address checks for individuals, and so if they have an address of record, they can make inquiries into that, and there's a willingness from the RCMP to support that, even if they have one we would still have coordination to do with Ask or the RCMP to potentially provide rides back out. And that was one of the things that Ask Wellness did say at this meeting, that if there is a safe place and the issue is, transportation, they could potentially assist with coordination there through their outreach workers. So I don't think we're ever going to have a perfect answer as to whether an individual has a fixed address that's suitable or not, but there's some degree of canvassing that we can do to support that.
Thank you.
Councillor Christopherson.
Good, thank you. Having the camps where you take them down and put them up and take them down and put them up, I think may inhibit establishment of a permanent or semi-permanent residence. But what I'm wondering about, have other cities or locations determined whether that approach of removal during the daytime and put it back up at night and back and forth, is that a deterrent, or does it help induce people to find a more permanent location? Do we have any sense of what other cities have determined with that?
Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Christopherson. That is a really complicated question. There are always going to be some people who are simply devoid of options, and for whom there's no element of choice involved, and they simply have nowhere to go. And for those people, a requirement to pack up your things and to move on a daily basis will pretty much necessarily involve additional hardship and mean that they have still no potential solution without the other supports that we know are needed to really resolve this. If there are some people who are, I really don't want to use language like voluntarily or by choice, but there are potentially some people for whom it is less involuntary than others. And for those... I know. Less involuntary. I'm couching this about as best I possibly can. It is, as I say, incredibly complicated. I don't have any data for you on, say, how making living in the park harder would encourage people to go back to housing. I think one of the things I would potentially be concerned about, and this, I say, is in no way a determining factor, but might be something you want to consider, is if, for example, and Sean discussed the potential of people who have theoretical housing but not suitable housing. If there are, for example, women who have escaped domestic violence or LGBT youth who don't feel safe at home, even if they have a home they can go back to, is that a safe home they can go back to? And so if as a city we're making it harder for those people to be in the park, then we might be encouraging them to return to a situation, if it does indeed encourage them to just find housing, literally any housing, which is less than ideal. And so that's, again, not a fantastic... There's no great data on this, and so I think we're often thinking about what ifs.
Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from is, and I think other cities have been through it, that these type of camps tend to grow and grow and grow, and not everybody that is there is truly destitute. And I don't think anybody wants to make life harder for somebody whose life is hard enough as it is. But you don't want to encourage the fringe that do have options to move in, and very often the fringe elements that move into a place sometimes make the life harder for the people that have to be there, that there are other elements that take advantage of that.
I think those are incredibly important points that you'll need to bear in mind as you continue to discuss the issue, and I think Sean has some comments. So.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you,
and then
Your Worship.
Councillor White, I'll go to you later.
Through to Councillor Christopherson. I think Council is all very well aware that it is so hard to make value judgments in this arena. Like, it's really, really hard. And so making any presumptions as to the reason why a person is there, whether they're able to find something else, if you haven't walked a mile in that particular person's shoes, because like everybody else, there's no two people that are the same, no two circumstances that are the same. Really tough to say. I think that, again, it's hard from a statistics perspective, but there have been enough tent cities that have been set up, broken down, and these types of bylaws implemented in other communities to find fairly conclusive evidence that it will at the least slow the rate of growth of tent cities. I think that's a fairly safe assertion to make with what we know. As Greg said, is that going to slow the rate of growth of homelessness in our community? Probably has no, or at least very little impact on that. Does that potentially increase, externalities that you would see in other areas of the community? Potentially. And, we're going to flag for you that I think those are real concerns. But if the concern is the growth of the tent city itself, and again, we know that in the public, there are people that are concerned that there are folks that are coming up, getting dropped off in our community, told to go to the park or whatever it is. And that is very difficult to substantiate. And from, our conversations with the Shelter Society and others, that if it happens, and it may, it's a vast minority. It's primarily Merrittonians that are using these services, and when I say Merrittonians, that may include outlying communities as well. So I'm going to put, yeah, you've got it. So I think that if the goal is to slow the rate of growth and to make sure that it doesn't become too entrenched, too established, then yes, it has value, and there's good evidence that this supports that particular objective. Anything past that, and I'm going to lean on exactly what Greg said, it's a bit of a wild card.
Thank you, Councillor White.
One of the things that concerns me is the cleanliness, for starters. Even our campgrounds have washroom facilities, and in some cases, showers. We have absolutely nothing like that available to them in the park. I don't know if it's because there's not a garbage can handy, but the garbage on the ground and the attraction of rats and mice and whatever else is out there is another concern for these people, especially sitting on the ground or sleeping on the ground. And I just think that there has to be some kind of a different solution. And I think there has to be more talks about this before I can support this this movement. There's got to be another answer somehow, some way that can support these people that don't have anywhere to go. And some of them don't want to go into an apartment or any kind of shelter. They want to be outside. And I learned that from speaking with some of them when it was freezing cold in the winter. And I went down there with another person and asked, do you need blankets? Do you need something? They were not interested, period. So that's just my position on it. I think if we're going to allow that, then there has to be some kind of facilities, washroom facilities or something that they can at least go to the bathroom in. That's all I have about that. Thanks.
Can I ask, I got the impression that you were going to not vote for it and then that you were going to vote for it. Okay. Going to vote for the movement of them. Going to vote, not to vote for the movement of them. Okay, thank you. needed to make that clear in my mind. And Councillor Etcher?
Well, I don't think we could really think of a more touchy subject at this point. Housing being the problem that it is. And I think even with having had the shelter available, there's only so many rooms, and there's rules and expectations for people for behavior. And some of these people are needing the mental health supports that maybe they're not receiving. And how do they get them? A lot of these people aren't functioning very well to get mental health assistance, and that's what they need more often than not. So it's definitely a concern. I mean, it would be nice to have a place where people could go and rides could be provided, because most of these people don't have transportation. So this is really a tough situation. I know that people are concerned for safety nearby. We've all heard the complaints and the comments. So I know it's not an easy decision, because you care for these people, and making this change and to reduce the effect is hard. So I know I'm concerned for safety of residents, and the health and well-being of the people that are there as well. And I know we have a tough decision, so thanks for the information anyway.
Thanks. Mr. Lois, did you have a...
Just, I'm sorry for the reminder, Your Worship, but at this point nothing's been moved or seconded, so are you still asking questions of staff, or would you like to actually put a motion for something on the table?
I think we have crossed that line, yeah. Okay, Councillor Luck.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So just before I ask a couple of questions here, first of all, I want to say I appreciate the staff for what they're trying to do here to find a solution to a real complicated problem, not only in our city, everywhere. All over North America, this is a problem that's, and I think if it was easy to solve, we could be looking at cities like Vancouver, Toronto, San Francisco, places like that, and they would have solved the problem. They have not solved the problem. This is becoming a huge problem all over North America. I don't know much about Europe, but certainly in North America, I've read enough about it. So I appreciate what the staff is trying to do with this bylaw change here, and I really appreciate that. As I was doing some reading here, I was reminded of two quotes.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, is this a question for staff, or is this part of the debate?
It will be a question. I'm leading to the question. Well, I'll leave maybe the quotes. Well, first of all, okay, quickly. I was reminded of two quotes, and it was from Napoleon, arguably the inventor of the modern day bureaucracy. But anyway, he says, laws which are consistent in theory often prove chaotic in practice. And the other quote I was reminded of, one should never forbid what one lacks the power to prevent. Hence my question. How? I remember 2 weeks ago we made there was a motion on the table to bring see if we could find a report to clean up some unsightly premises around the community. We did not have the staff to do that. How are we going to administer this new bylaw? It just doesn't make sense. We don't have the staff for doing other things. How are we going to make sure there's enough staff there at 7 o'clock at night to make sure nobody's set up before 7, and making sure that they leave at 8 o'clock the next morning? That's a huge issue. And if they don't obey the law, don't obey the bylaw, what are we going to do to change their behavior, that they do leave by 8 and are in by 7? So those are the two questions I have for you.
Thank you.
Lewis.
I don't know. Oh, it's mine, sorry.
Thank you, Worship, through to Councillor Luck. In terms of enforcement, the 8 a.m. start time was deliberately chosen because that is when City Hall is open with staff. And therefore, my intention would be, if this passes in its current form, that a new, essentially daily part of the bylaw officer's role would become a checking in on the park as the day began. When obviously, if there were issues that needed to be dealt with, they would then need to work with other communities, other organizations, RCMP, etc., in order to actually take further action as needed. You are correct, this would be an additional burden on staff time and resources. When it comes to ensuring that there is nobody creating a shelter earlier than 7 p.m. on that day, we would be reliant on RCMP enforcement for that.
And Mr. Smith, did you have another comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to point the component of that question that was in relation to the last one, recognizing that everything is always allocation of staff resources. And I just wanted to note, we would have done the last one had that been where the direction from council as well. But so we're not saying we can't do it. Of course, we can make whatever it is that you guys ask happen, and we're just going to be allocating resources accordingly. So.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, then we need to, in order to discuss this further, we need a motion on the table. We've got a number of options here from staff. And before we go into the motion, I'd like to ask staff one question of my own. If we do nothing, we will still have the potential fire risks. We will still have the potential health risks, or I guess that's will we have, and we will still have the neighbors complaining of their property being used as a latrine. Mr. Lois first.
Your Worship, if you do nothing, then I would anticipate the situation remaining as it is or slowly intensifying as essentially that was what was happening in last fall. As has been correctly noted, there are no sanitary facilities in Nicola Park. The nearest is a bathroom across the bridge in Lions Park. There were questions about a month ago about fire safety. We did investigate with the fire department, and this, as things were currently at that point, they felt that the propane stoves in use were essentially the same as for any campground, and therefore there was no elevated risk of fire hazard beyond that which any camping would be. But of course, if you have more people using more stoves, then that does become harder to more problematic. But obviously fire risk is something that we have been dealing with the fire department. Sanitation, of course, if you have more and more people living in that park which has no facilities, that will likely be an ongoing issue.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, and I just wanted to hit a point on the neighbors' side. I recognize that in dealing with this challenging issue, you've got a lot of things to compete, but you are very well aware that in particular Bedford Apartments and the neighboring private property, this has been an ongoing and serious concern for those individuals. As we all recognize how hard this is. I think they recognize it one step further when it's not fun if you have to go clean up human excrement off of your property or whatever that scenario is. And so I will say that this doesn't necessarily solve that problem, is what I want to point at. Is it is one step towards that problem, but can I guarantee that those types of things aren't going to continue after this if they continue to overnight in that area? I would not make that guarantee at this point.
I've also had a number of complaints from the public as well, as far away as Langley and First, and complaining about the same kind of behavior with a lot of theft, and it's going right back to Nicola Park. That's Councillor Christopherson, you had a question for staff?
Yes, just a point of clarification that it says that council provide 3 readings to proposed park regulations bylaw. Then it goes to a public hearing, does it not? No?
Through your worship to Councillor Christopherson, the proposed parks bylaw is not a land use bylaw. I know it might feel like one, but in terms of the Local Government Act, it isn't, and so there is no public hearing on this. If you provide it with 3 readings, then you could then adopt it at any point at any future meeting. I will note, since I know you were, there was some brief discussion in there about what the motion would be. The way the staff report was worded was to recommend that you provide 3 readings. So if you did want to do that, then the appropriate motion to move would be the ordinary that provide a first reading to bylaw number, etc. But it was worded there because there is such a wide variety of options. They didn't want to just put in the normal read once, read twice, read 3 times, because we do feel this should be council's discussion and decision within the range of possibilities.
Good, thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, I had Councillor Fair still talking. Questions to staff? Okay.
Thank you. So I want to ask if there's any way we can get evidence that there is potential to improve the situation through these. I know that's already been discussed and talked about, but I don't feel comfortable with that unless I can see some real evidence showing that there has actually been improvements in other communities as a result of breaking camp every day.
Improvements in what areas?
So improvements as to, well, yeah, hard to quantify, but reducing the number of campsites, the number of people using the area as a homeless shelter.
Yeah, we feel comfortable that if that is the metric, that this will reduce the number of people who use Nicola Park as a campsite. I think that's the safest assertion that we can confidently make. That has proven out in Vernon, that's proven out in Victoria. When you require things to be camped up, it's one extra barrier, which we acknowledge that's what it is. We are making camping more inconvenient, and some people, especially if they do have any other mechanisms, may choose not to do that. I think that's the potential win in this, is for those people who might have alternate safe place to go, is you might actually solve something that way by making it slightly less convenient to camp directly in the community. The challenge, as you've suggested, Travis, is if this will not assist the individuals themselves, it will make their lives potentially, no, not potentially, it will make their lives more difficult. It will reduce the degree of permanence of what's there, which, again, so we didn't get into this too much, but we're at the point right now where small things like the grass needing to be watered, we run an irrigation system. We don't run that irrigation because there's people in the park. So the grass is going to die, and we will probably, because that's connected to what we have at the curling club, or at the lawn bowling club, we would have to cap the irrigation there so we can continue to water the lawn bowling club. It's little things like that, but for us, I think it's the human element that we really would like to focus on, because we'll make do with whatever council's direction is on that front. I think that it will be less unsightly if that is the goal of council. It may even have the effect of resulting in a cleaner area. Again, when RCMP went today, they talked about exposed knife, needles, condoms. Like it's not ideal when you're in a permanent scenario like that. There are safety hazards. At the same time, the public isn't really using that space so much because it's sort of sequestered for homeless. So it's health and safety for who. Whereas if you do a day use camping and you say, hey, everybody can come in each and every day. Well, what if we don't do as good a job cleaning up the sharps in the area, or now the public might feel comfortable using that space because it's open, but there could be more hazards that we're going to have to be watchful for. So across the board, any option is going to produce some wins, and it will probably produce some challenges. We as staff are recommending the implementation of this. I think RCMP is. I think that service provider organizations are generally supportive, though, again, as you've said, it comes with downsides.
Thank you. That was an awkward question, but I really appreciate your efforts to try and give an answer.
Councillor Richard.
When you were speaking with the different groups about this, was Interior Health having any suggestion about community health, you know, maybe making sure people are taking medications that are needed, because some of these people are needing well, I'm not saying everybody, but sometimes there's a need from certain health pieces that aren't maybe being addressed, which sometimes end up with people being on the streets.
We didn't discuss kind of the individual needs. Are they taking their prescriptions? Do they have are there even prescriptions to prescribe? Have people been diagnosed accordingly? Like that level of detail was not explored in the meeting. There was discussions again around encouraging use of sharps containers, what cleanup would potentially need to look like, but did not get into medications.
Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of questions. So if we're going to be condoning this, if we go, say we move option number 1 and we're going to kind of condone camping in the park, visitors, tourism could start camping in all our parks as well. You know that, right? No? This is just for homelessness? How do we differentiate?
Fixed address. Asked if they have a fixed address.
Oh, they have to have a fixed address? Okay, thank you for that. And so there was some discussion around here. There's probably because there's a huge mess over there because there isn't an adequate supply of garbage cans and things like that. Could we modify this motion that we would also be looking at putting some garbage cans and maybe some washing facilities over there to try to help keep it clean? Because what I'm really seeing this is, and I think Mr. Smith, you've identified, is this is a first step to solving a big issue. And if we're going to do that, then should we be looking at maybe installing some garbage cans at least and see if these people can start using them down there? That group of individuals down there could start using those or something?
Garbage is discussed. Garbage is a thumbs up. It's something that we can do. We're either going to need to do more work to route people to the existing bathroom, which did get use last year.
Which isn't that far of a trek. It's just over the bridge to there, is it not, if I'm mistaken?
It's not far. When you have to go to the bathroom, or if you're not, when you're not in your, that's exactly right. And sometimes, you know, whether there's substances or others, that trip can feel or look a little bit longer. Right. And I will say that there's lots of work to do with maintaining that bathroom in those scenarios as well.
There is.
That was a real challenge at some points.
So it looks like we could go the garbage cans and maybe the washing piece, the Johnny on the spots, or could take a little bit more work on that one, but that might help solve the thing too. So if council directs this, we are going to need to work to make sure that we come up with a plan so that, again, how we're going to change our watering, what we're going to do with garbage cans.
And that
bathrooms
could be a discussion for council.
We'll end up creating some plans around that.
So one more question then, you were mentioning you were talking to some of the people that are helping out these individuals in the community, everything. Does the community have a community committee or a task force looking into the issues of homelessness in our community? If not, could that be something that we would look at, somebody from council chairing that or working with that committee and looking for solutions to this and examining what's going on there? Maybe, because like I said, I think what we're seeing here is this is a first step.
Are we asking a question?
I'm asking a question, that could we put a committee like that together and bring some people in from the community and talk about some of these issues?
Can I respond to that? That's not really a council committee. That's a community-wide organization committee that works with the homeless, and that committee is not, I wouldn't put that on the council list of committees.
That being said, I'm sure that council, if you would like to attend, there would be zero concern with having you there. The meeting today was called the Collaborative Community Issue Table. Again, great turnout. Lots of these discussions do happen, and so knowing that there is an interest, I will canvass, and I can't imagine there would be a concern with having members of council attend. As well, at council's direction, I did receive a request to bring in BC Housing for a committee of the whole for you guys to talk with them directly, because again, housing is going to be the largest part of a solution, if not the whole bit. it's a huge part of this equation, and council's going to need to decide some policy one way or the other how they want to go. So.
Okay, and Councillor White?
If there's garbage cans and those sort of things going in there, why can't there be temporary washrooms in there, and then maybe they can go to the aquatic center and have a shower once a week or something?
Is that a council debate issue?
It's a question, can that be?
Well, that would be up to council to determine whether or not we put washrooms or facilities in there. I think staff are saying if we so choose, they will make it happen. But that debate needs to take place at the council table. Mr. Lois?
Your Worship, I think what Mr. Smith was trying to get across was that if council instruct that they want us to take the steps proposed in the staff report and to formalise that activity, then we would take various operational steps in order to make that work, including looking at, say, what the trash solution is, if there was benefits from, say, temporary sanitation facilities, etc.
Thank you.
Not to take words out of his mouth.
No, you got it. I would just prefer to see how things operate on the ground, because of course you don't want to set this up where there's a bunch of bathrooms right there and now it's really entrenched as an encampment, and so we're
essentially, if you give us the instructions on what you want to see done, we will figure out the operational way to make that happen as best we can.
Thank you. That's my position as well, yeah. So, okay, we need a motion, and it's recommended that council provide first reading to proposed park regulation bylaw. So moved, Christofferson. Second, Etchart. And anyone want to speak to this issue? Councillor Christofferson, you made the motion.
I think that we need to start down this road. We'll probably want to adjust it as we go along to see how it goes, but we can't just ignore the problem. We have to try to do something that's going to help the citizens of our town, but also help the people who are homeless. So I think this is a good start to examining how things will go. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Councillor Etchart, I believe, is next.
Yeah, in the options discussion about allowing, it's not as if we want to see a large encampment, but we have to do something so it doesn't increase. And so that's why I thought, well, if we try this and we need to change it later, at least then we can. Because to do nothing, well, the problem's only going to get worse. And it's not popular. Whatever decision we make, people are going to be upset with either way. So we have to do something and try. So that's why I'm in favor, because we have to try something at least and see what fails or works, and try our best to support these people, because they don't seem to be able to make all these decisions necessarily of the best for the community anyway. Thanks.
Councillor Luck.
Thanks, Mayor.
And then Phil.
Yeah, in principle, I support this, and the only reason I'm saying in principle is because I think there's a lot of work to do on it, and as it's been said by Councillor Etchart and Councillor Christofferson, I think it's a good first start to get things rolling on here, and we can tweak and change this as we go. As during our Q&A with the staff here, I think really we do need to look at making sure it includes some garbage cans down there, some other facilities to help the process move along here, because that's one of the biggest problems. If we're going to allow them to camp here overnight, then I think we need to be able to provide some facilities and some equipment then for them to use, and try and get them to use the garbage cans and work with them on that way and that as well. The other piece I'd really like to see is working closer with the task force or that group that's in our committee, and see if we can work with them to come up with some more solutions, or just even learn more about the problem if I can, because even the little bit of reading I was doing, this is a huge problem with a ton of moving parts, as we all know. Every night it's on the TV, every day we hear of people in the park and doing that. So I'm going to support this as we stand here, knowing that we're going to be able to be very flexible and tweak it a bit as we go along. So thank you.
Councillor Fair?
Thank you. Knowing that the current situation in Nicola Park is not safe, not healthy, and not helping the people that need it because of those conditions, I think it's clear that something does need to be done. When I imagine breaking the homeless camp every morning, what occurs to me, what I envision is people filling carts full of belongings that they push around town and end up in worse places potentially, and creating more problems for other residents. So I think potentially that could be simply just scattering the problem around town instead of having it in one place. So I'd really like to see what was suggested to really look into a safe way to contain the belongings of the people during the day if we go ahead with this. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and it's my turn now. This is a hard decision for council. It's a hard decision, or it was a hard report for staff to write. Having said that, nothing is going to be perfect. As staff have brought this to us, it's the least worst position to be in. And we have tax-paying residents that are, I don't even know the word I want, but they're not happy. They're having difficulty coping with this situation, and I worry that something is going to escalate between some of our citizens and some of these homeless individuals. And if there is an opportunity to have us move some of the ones that do have a place to go to, a safe place to go to, and I'm sure this task force will help with those solutions. And I know that staff is looking at giving time notice to the residents before they show up on their doorstep and say, you're gone. So this is something that may take them to other areas in town. It may take them to an area outside of town. It may take them to private properties. And that's an issue that we may also have to look at in the near future, is what do we do with homeless camp that sets up on a private property? Maybe because of a landlord that's not around or something. But I'm going to support this in this sense, because I'm really, yeah, we have to start someplace. I think that's the right thing to say. We have to be able to give our citizens some acknowledgement that we understand what their issues are as well. Councillor Fair, did you have last word on this?
Well, I wanted to make another comment because I also think that it's important to recognize that potentially we could be forcing people back into a dangerous situation that they're trying to escape from, even though they have a fixed address and they've left there for a reason that's only known to them. So I'd like to somehow find an assurance that we can safeguard that. I don't know what exactly can be done there, but perhaps working with the local RCMPs to try and determine what situations they may be heading back into as a result of not living in Nicola Park.
Councillor White?
We do have facilities in town for domestic abuse victims and whatnot, and places for them to go, easier than for a homeless person, that's for sure. Just wanted to bring that up.
That's a good point. Any other comments? This is your opportunity to debate if that's where you need to let it out. Councillor Luck.
Sorry, thanks, Mayor. Just one last comment on there. If we pull together this task force and everything, it's imperative that the provincial government, who is the one responsible for housing, one that's responsible for medical, one that's mental health, addictions and all that, be at that table. I hope that like interior health is that the same way. BC Housing needs to be there. These are the three that I can think. There's probably other ones, but those are three key ones that we need to get down there and sit at that table. They are the ones that are responsible for these issues. Unfortunately, we wear it because we got our boots are on the ground, everything here, but it's imperative that those people are also very important that they're part of that committee and task force. So just wanted to make that last comment. Thank you,
And they
Mayor.
are all a part of that task force. So seeing no other comments, I'm going to call the question on providing first reading to the proposed park regulation bylaw. I can't do 3 if it hasn't been. Can you?
Thank you, Your Worship. As you say, this would be the first reading of proposed parks regulation bylaw. I need better glasses. Thank you. 2334 2022. And then if it passes first reading, then you would look at going on to second and third readings.
Okay. So I can do 1, 2, 3 today?
Yes.
Thank
yes,
you.
Your Worship. Simply adoption may not take place on the same day as third reading.
Yeah. So we're providing first reading for proposed park regulation 2334 2022 bylaw. And we have, we have Christopherson and Etchart moved and second. We've had the discussion. I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that I need a mover and a seconder that council provide second reading to the proposed park regulation 2334 2022. Luck and Christopherson. And anybody want to speak to this one? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that counts, I need a mover and a seconder that council provide third reading to proposed park regulation 2334 2022. Christopherson? Luck? And anybody want to speak to this again? I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Thank you. That was a tough one.
Muddy the waters for you.
Okay.
Know that we at some point likely will need to bring forward an amendment to this no matter what happens. When you look at the hours, they're very summer centric hours. And so this is going to get revisited. And if you feel the need to revisit it at an earlier point, please just bring that forward to staff.
Thank you. And so now we move on to new business. But before we do that, Mr. Lois or Lawis? So I've been pronouncing it wrong all these years. I apologize. I will try to make it Lawis. Yeah, a lot of times you're Chris Christopherson. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Moving on to new business, 9.1, 2022-2023 Annual Operating Agreement with BC Transit. And Mr. Anderson, staff report, please.
Yes, Mayor and Council. This is a recommendation for Council to authorize the Mayor and Corporate Officer to sign the 2022-2023 Annual Operating Agreement with BC Transit. So the city has an agreement with BC Transit to operate transit services for the residents of Merritt and extending into TNRD electoral area M. Each year this is updated with a new operating agreement. The operating agreement runs from April 1st through to March 31st. So we are about a month behind on getting this agreement in place. We have our contract with BC Transit, and then BC Transit contracts with the operating company that provides the transit services. drivers and so forth. There is a budget in place for this in our 2022 financial plan to cover this cost, and there is an outstanding amount in the local only transit fund, which was basically the COVID-19 safe restart funding that they provided of about $17,000 that will get used up in 2022 as well. So $249,535 is the amount for 2022, which is net of the revenue from the system, which this year I think they budgeted about $84,000 in net fares, which is coming back up to more normal amounts. So there is a copy of a cover letter here from Mr. Seth Wright, our representative with BC Transit, and I know Seth would be happy to come and provide a presentation on transit services at any time, especially as we start to get back into sort of post-COVID here and without the bridge in place and the plans and so forth around routing. I know that they would be happy to come and have some discussions with us. We did have discussions with them in the past about expanding services with new developments and so forth, but that's kind of been put on the back burner until we get a new bridge in place and normal routes assigned. So a copy of Seth's cover letter there, and then the agreement if there are any questions on this.
Does anyone have any questions for staff? Okay, I have one. This hasn't been brought up for a few years, but I thought at one point we had talked about the lower costs for some of our routes being Lower Nicola and that's the only one I can think of because it's Lower Nicola and the Lower Nicola Indian Band outside of Merritt. But we were going to look at some kind of cost recovery on those two routes. Have we looked at that at all? I know that our years have been filled, and I suspect the answer is not yet.
We have agreements with TNRD and Lower Nicola Indian Band as well with transit. Those need to be revisited for sure. The costs are going up. As I mentioned in his cover letter here, one of their primary drivers is fuel, and the agreement was put together with a price of fuel $1.36 a liter. So it has substantially gone up since then. So I could see that our costs may be higher at the end of the year than what we have in this plan at this point. But yeah, no, definitely those agreements that we have, cost sharing with the LNIB and Thompson Nicola should be revisited.
Thank you. It may not be our highest priority for this year, but I just didn't want to lose that in the process. Thank you. So we have a recommendation that Council authorize Mayor and Corporate Officer to sign the 2022-2023 Annual Operating Agreement with BC Transit. So White and Christofferson. And anyone want to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. Moves us into notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? I'm looking around quickly, seeing none. Move into reports from council. Are there any reports from council? Councillor White.
Wes David from the Wild West Fishing Show is now in town, and the fishing derby that happening on the weekend, that he will be present to hand out the prizes, has about 50 entries as of today, and 80% of those entries are from out of town. So that's 80 new people to Merritt for fishing.
That's maybe 40. Pardon? 80% of 50.
Yeah. So they're
perfect. Yep. Any other council report? Or report from council? However you want to hear it. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to information items. There are none. And that brings us to our closed session. I need a mover that the meeting be closed to press and public under sections 91C, labor relations and other employee relations, and 3, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And that would be 90. Oh. Oh, I see. You have it right below though. Okay. So item 91E, not 3. Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder. Fair and Luck. And nobody wants to speak to that, I hope. I'm going to quickly call. All in favor?